Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aina Akila binti Edwards, metric number 1916096. Now, I will talk about early Muslim interest in Quranic translation. Based on Islamic history, Quranic translation is started during Prophet Muhammad era in certain parts of the Quran. It focused on translation from Arabic into Persian, as Persia played an important role in the formation of early Islamic civilization. Salman al-Farisi, who is one of the companion of Prophet Muhammad SAW, translated the first chapter of Quran, which is contains 7 verses, into Persian. Following with that, in relation to prayer salat, one of the figure of Hanafi school stated in certain circumstances, a Muslim may recite the Quran in Persian. It is only allowable for those who were not yet able to recite the Quran in Arabic. Abu Hanifah believed that since prayer is an obligation, so Muslims should not fail to pray simply because they may not yet able to recite the first chapter of the Quran. It's also common practice in early Islam for the meaning of the Quran to be paraphrased in the local vernacular after it was recited in Arabic. Some Arab rulers of newly conquered land show interest to translate Al-Quran into local language. But then, during that time, there are no one try to translate the whole Quran into certain language.
My name is Seratul Akmar binti Abdul Qayyum Han, metric number 190398. So I would like to explain about the Muslim and non-Muslim regarding to the translation of Quran. Firstly, Muslim and the translation of Quran. From the first century of Islam, native languages have been used to convey the meaning of Quran to non-Arabic speaking Muslim. Jami al-Bayan is the first major translation of full Quranic text to be the 10th century translation into Persian of Tabari's monumental commentary. Next, the translations by Muslim in regional Indian languages started to appear, such as in Urdu and Sindhi in the 18th century. In other parts of Asia and Africa, the printed translations of the Quran has begun to appear in the first half of the 20th century. For example, African was translated the Quran into Yoruba, and Asia was translated the Quran in Malay. The efforts to translate the Quran into different languages has increased after the Second World War, especially among Muslim scholars. Next, non-Muslim and the translation of Quran. The non-Muslim interest in translation Quran has begun in the very early period of Islam. Some Christians have started to translate parts of the Quran into Syriac, and the first translations made for polemic purposes. The first European translations is in 12th century, where Peter the Venerable concerned about Islam. In 16th and 17th centuries, translations into European vernaculars began to increase. The first English translation published by Scottish author in the middle of 17th century. Meanwhile, the translation directly from Arabic has begun in 18th century. In 19th and early 20th century, the translations into other languages also appear, including Swedish, Hebrew, Russian, and Portuguese. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rosfa Izamiti Ahmad Jahari with metric number 1918050. So my topic is Western Scholar and Translation of Quran. First, Maurice Bucaille. He proved that all scientific facts about the Quran were proved true and in line with the latest scientific discoveries, while it was the opposite in the Bible and the Old Scriptures. Second, John Wensbrough. His claim was the assertion of the Quran was not completed until around 115 years after the Prophet's death. Third, Theodor Noldeck. He described the Quran as a book composed of unstable word and letter and full of variants which as a result could not possibly be divine. Fourth, Andrew Rippin. He argued regarding the Quran history and interpretation include that the Quran must be understood within a broader monotheistic rather than purely Arabian environment. Fifth, Gerd Poon, he suggests that part of the Quran may even be 100 years older than Islam itself, and the kind of texts were not all understood even at the time of Muhammad. And sixth is the Christoph Luxemburg. He argued that Quran is based on Christian liturgical document written in a language closer to Aramaic than Arabic.
My name is Siti Hajar binti Mahmudin and my metric number is 1914658. Next subtopic is on the Muslim discourse on the translation of Quran. There will be two arguments, theologically and linguistically. In terms of theology, they argue that Quran is not supposed to be translated because it is the words of Allah, which is inimitable even in Arabic itself. Thus, Quran cannot be translated into any other language as well. Second argument is on linguistic element. Translating word itself is difficult. Meaning of a word in one language may not be fully conveyed in another language, especially when the language associated with cultural and linguistic context of particular language in its community. So there are two conditions regarding translation of Quran. First, literal translation is not allowed as it may change the original meaning. In addition, translating Quran can only be conducted by those who have sufficient knowledge of Quran or any related knowledge. Quran translation is allowed to point out the legal rulings within the Quran to allow non-Arabic speaking people to understand the content of Quran and for them to be able to apply it in their daily lives. A fatwa issued by a former head of the Azhar Fatwa Committee of Egypt, Atiyah Sakar, he stated that translation of the Quran can never be considered as a Quran itself. It is rather a human words offered to explain the divine revelation of the Quran. Second, it does not bear the same sense of miracles compared to the original one, which initiated by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala himself. Lastly, it can never have the same grandiloquent effect and beauty of the Quran itself. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Naifah Zati binti Abdullah, metric number 1912884. So I will explain on the rules of Quranic translation and the differences between translation, tafsir and tadabbur. So for the rules of Quranic translation, it is divided into three types, which is harfiyah, tafsiriyah and phonetic translation. Harfiyah translation is translation following the exact word in Al-Quran or exact translation of Al-Quran. So basically this type of translation is prohibited because it can bring damage towards the miracle of Al-Quran. Second is tafsiriyah. Tafsiriyah translation is the translation of Al-Quran through commentaries which brought the same meaning as the Al-Quran. So basically it is allowed and also can be called as fardu kifayah because it helps us for a better understanding. Third is phonetic translation. So, phonetic translation is the writing Arabic text of the Al-Quran using different language which have the same sound. So, basically, it is allowed only as a learning tools for the beginners, but once they already able to read the Al-Quran in Arabic language, so they cannot use the transliteration or phonetic translation anymore. Next is differences between translation, tafsir and tadabbur. So, translation is the transcription of the meaning for the word of Al-Quran with the word from other language conveying the same meaning and purpose of the Al-Quran which made by the translator. Tafsir is the clarification of the verse of Al-Quran which made by the Mufassirun, and tadabbur is the pondering or reflecting over the Al-Quran as you reach at the end of the verse which performed by our own self.
My name is Pandita Densan, metric number 1910764. I will expand on the challenge and the importance of translating the Quran. Challenge in translating the Quran. For Arabic word can have a variety of different meaning. Second, the translation should be accompanied by transliteration. Third, the Quran is written in classical Arabic, therefore it is required a full committee of Islamic scholars who have great mastery of classical Arabic language. For the Quran has to be interpreted in light of the historical circumstances of the early Muslim society when the Quran was revealed. Fifth, the Quran and Hadith are deeply related, so scholars attempting to translate the Quran should be fully aware of the Hadith and Sarah. And next, the importance of translation the Quran. To understanding the importance of Quran translation, the Quran is the central religious text of Islam. It is worth mentioning that only 20% of Muslims are Arabic speakers. The majority of Muslims across the world depend on translation to understand the Quran, and the Quran is now translated into most African, Asian, and European languages. The Quran is written in highly symbolic and classical from the Arabic language, so translating it requires a profound understanding of its meaning and an ability to reflect the meaning into the target language.